Hello everyone, welcome to another Book Review Wednesday, and today I wanted to briefly discuss a book that I've already read, and one that I am sort of very fond of, even though it is a pretty grim book, and that is 1984 by George Orwell. What I like about this book in particular is sort of the concepts that it addresses and sort of the world that it creates for the audience. Although it is probably not as accurate as to what actually happens in 1984, George Orwell still creates this kind of world of fear and paranoia that I think can really grasp the readers, and I think identifies with a lot of people, especially in this day and age, especially since our technology is growing so rapidly. And you'll see how the book addresses this aspect and how it's incorporated into the plot, and how ultimately it's used sort of as a weapon against people. And to give you a sense of what this story entails, well, basically it revolves around this main character named Winston Smith, and there's also other characters involved, but one person that he interacts with that is very sort of pivotal to the story would be Julia, who is part of a resistance group. And what you have to understand about George Orwell's 1984 and the world that he creates is that he creates a world where there is sort of like this quasi-dictatorship, and everything is sort of under this Big Brother, and this is where we get the famous kind of quote of Big Brother. And a lot of times people like to use this term as like maybe a political slander, so it goes to show how a novel can have such a profound impact on the way we see our political system. But despite that, the interesting thing about the journey that Winston sort of goes through, at least I feel, is that it's a journey that I think can be identifiable and sort of relatable to us as a society. It doesn't really matter where you live necessarily, but basically this world not only has a dictatorship, but it's very technologically advanced. Again, way more advanced than really what actually was for the time of when 1984 came around. But I always found that funny, these authors think that we're going to be so much more advanced than what we really turn out to be. So it's kind of interesting. But again, it is a very technological world. Everybody seems to be somehow connected and yet spied on and looked at and put a lens on. So there is this kind of sense of lack of privacy. And I think with the Edward Snowden case that came out this past year, you kind of see how these concepts are really ingrained into our society and into our news and such. This concept that the government or whoever is in charge of a society can hone in on a particular person for whatever reason. And that reasoning, according to George Orwell's novel, is basically to sort of control people and gain a sense of power and authority over society, that allows for superiority to flourish. And that's really what you get with a dictatorship. It's the concept of controlling people and having the ability to see people as less than what they truly are. And George Orwell seems to really capture that aspect within the story. Again, this book is not a light read. it is definitely depressing. You really do feel sympathy, though, for Winston, the character, and what he has to go through. And ultimately, it's sad in the sense that it's almost like Winston is given no choices. It seems like his life is just dictated by whoever's in charge. And I think some people have brought up this argument that, well, what George Orwell is saying is really won't happen. You know, look at what happened in 1984, nothing. There wasn't a dictatorship, at least in the Western world. Well, during that time, you could probably make the argument for Russia, because that was still around. But regardless, like the United States, the Western Europe was really embraced democracy. But still, he does hone in onto these ideas that this world domination could occur, and it could happen, and it's possible. I mean, it is reasonable. I think this was his sort of response. When did he in particular write this? I can't necessarily, I am not sure of the time period of when he wrote this. But I am assuming that since there was this big change going on and Russia was becoming a superpower, we ended World War II with the travesties of Hitler and Stalin. So really, we are dealing with a fairly unstable time period, and it's reasonable that George Orwell would come up with something that is, I guess, somewhat similar to that. But I really am not sure. He might have written it around World War One. I can't, for the life of me, I cannot not remember. And it's really bugging me. I wish I knew. When did he write 1984? I can't remember. It's not telling me. Oh, it's not. It doesn't say, but he was like born in what? Yeah, he was born in 1903. So yeah, I think it's safe to assume that he wrote this like maybe a little bit before World War II or a little bit after. I'm not sure. The page that I wanted to use doesn't tell me. But regardless of when he wrote this, it seems like he really addresses these sort of universal concepts that have sort of, I think, existed throughout history. This idea of controlling people. We've seen this with the within a religious context too, with the Catholic Church, and we've seen this. We've seen this through political means, through having a king, and so on and so forth. So it's really honing in on this idea of you have no privacy. Like, this is a world where you have no privacy. You have no right to be content with yourself and express your thoughts and your ideas. Your ideas are basically controlled in this world. You can't really do anything ultimately. And he really does create this world of misery, and this book is not a very lighthearted story. And I think that turns a lot of people off, and yes, it's not the most uplifting, it's not the most hope-filled book, but I think what it does is it's not, I don't think it's supposed to be a hopeful kind of story. It's supposed to be kind of a warning sign. It's supposed to be like a signal for society to say, look, you know, there is the possibility that there might be people out there, regardless of where they fit within the ranks of society, but there will be people who will try to ultimately control you. And you can either give in to that control, or you can not. The thing is, though, is that oftentimes it's portrayed in a way where someone else ultimately has no choice because they're being tortured, and you'll see how this plays a pivotal role in the story when you see Winston getting tortured. and being forced to believe in things and to do what everybody else does. And it's really sad, because you almost feel like this person really has no choice, except to either obey or just die. And it has that kind of tragic and kind of grimming feeling that I think will engage some readers, and it might turn off some readers. But I feel like he does it in a very simple way too. Like, this book, as you can see, is not all that long. It's roughly less than 300 pages. But in those roughly less than 300 pages, George Orwell still creates a world where it's not believable in the sense of today's standards, because we know that 1984 didn't have a dictatorship, and we didn't have this Republic of Oshia or whatever. But regardless of it being fiction, it holds true to this kind of real reality that people have gone through throughout the ages, and this is the idea of control and of being suppressed by government authority. And we've seen this time and time again. So I think what George Orwell is doing is just kind of trying to warn people about these kinds of things, and realize the implications of what it means to have a government person or someone within a high position sort of dictate your life and monitor you. I don't know if our culture has changed to the point where this concept is kind of seen as almost going into conspiracy theory territory, and there's still been questionings as to whether or not certain things that the government has done were done out of more of a sense of control rather than trying to protect the people and such. And I can understand that these concepts are probably not going to go away, and everybody's going to have this I think sense of paranoia, and this kind of fear that there will be people out there who will try to control and dictate and do horrible things. And what we have to do from this story is not look at it as this grim, dooming, unhopeful scenario. What we should do is look at it as a warning sign and a wake-up call. And I think that's really what George Orwell wanted to do. I don't think he wanted to give people the impression that all hope is lost. You're just gonna have to deal with it. You either die or that's the end. I think he just wanted to create this world where it's sort of like displaying itself as a warning sign to people, and that it gives a context as to what it means when someone can infiltrate your life in such a private manner and dictate how you feel, how you think, everything. And it's kind of crazy how our technology has advanced so much that people have felt that this kind of a scenario is creeping back into their mindset. And you'll kind of see how George Orwell's 1984 sort of does that. Now, people might say that this is a bad thing, that George Orwell brings up these concepts, and that it's not appropriate to address them, because then it leads people to fear maybe something that's not really real. And I can understand that viewpoint, but I think ultimately the readers are going to take it however they want to take it. And for me personally, I just take it as a warning signal. I take it as a book that's trying to address something that exists and has existed within our society for however long. And you do kind of see this idea of controlling people, and it's existed forever. And I think the idea is that we learn to open our minds, and if we feel like we're being personally invaded, to do something about it before this kind of a world exists. Because at this point, to where the book really opens up, Winston's already been in this world for quite some time and has just gotten used to it and has accepted it. And I think George Orwell's idea is don't let this world exist. Do whatever you can to not let human free thought and free will exist. I think he just wants people to be free from this kind of control that they feel. And I think that it's important that we try to break away from this idea of having government control certain aspects of our lives. I mean, I think clearly people, regardless of your political beliefs, can understand this kind of point, and that's why the United States and various other European countries have embraced this idea of democracy and free will and such. So I think ultimately this is really all I can say about this book. Again, I don't want to give away anything that really happens, but just know that it's not happy sunshines and rainbows. It's not like that there's a little bunny hopping here and there's a rainbow and says 1984. It's really a grim book. It's not designed to be uplifting or hopeful. But what it is designed is, at least in my opinion, I feel it's designed to be a warning sign. It's intended to give the audience a sense of, fear, but also a sense of realizing when somebody's rights feels like that it's been crossed. And I think this really applies, and this book, I think, was really one of the first ones to really kind of tackle this issue of government control and the idea that someone could invade your life in such a way and take away things from you and take away everything that you have as a human being. And it's really sad. It's sad in a way, but it's dealing with this concept of warning. And ultimately, all you really need to know as far as plot-wise is concerned is that Winston gets involved with this organization that's against the Republic of Oshia, which is basically the place that he lives in, that has a dictator, that has this figure named Big Brother that actually nobody sees. So again, that's kind of what ultimately all you need to know. It just kind of takes off from there, and you'll see the circumstances that he goes through and the risks that he takes by associating with a rebellion group. So I believe that's ultimately, though, all I can say. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. But before I go, I wanted to briefly discuss some books that I currently have purchased and I hope to read, and also some that I hope to purchase early on within the future, and give you a sense of how I'm going to approach this book review session of my channel. So basically, I'm going to read Sense and Sensibility this coming week, and as I go through reading it, I hope to have it done by next week so that I can review this book for you. and I feel like I'm going to like this one more than I liked Pride and Prejudice, but who knows? But I think that it would be cool to address sort of a classic book again. I also have another one of Jane Austen's called Mansfield Park, which is another one that's famous, I guess. So, and it was only $1, so I'm looking forward to reading that one too. And there's another one that I thought, another classic that I thought would be interesting to read, and this is The Three Musketeers. I usually don't read books that have, for some reason I always have female lead characters within a lot of the books that I read, 1984 being one of the exceptions. But this one is, I think, a really light-hearted kind of swashbuckling story, and I'm kind of looking forward to reading this, especially when the Disney movie that came out of this was kind of all over the place, I heard. So I think it'll be interesting to kind of read this sort of adventure type book. And this is a historical fiction book by Philippa Gregory. As you know, I didn't really particularly care so much for the Boleyn Girl, but I did like her other book, Lady of the Rivers, a lot more. This one in particular is about Catherine of Aragon, and I think this one would be a lot more interesting because I think the things that Catherine of Aragon had to go through within her life are a lot more interesting than someone, I think, like Anne Boleyn. So I think overall this would be an interesting read to have. And then this is another historical fiction work by Ken Follett, and it's called The Pillars of the Earth. And basically it's supposed to be about these, I believe, an architect and a monk, and how they go about building one of the greatest Gothic style, I guess, churches of the time. And I guess there's supposed to be sort of religious conflicts and stuff. So I figured this one might be a little bit similar to Hunchback in that sense, because it is sort of taking place around this same kind of time period, and where we see the church starting to establish itself, and maybe there being some corruption there, and yada yada yada. So this would be, I think, an interesting read, and it is a Bible, so it's probably going to take me some time. And there's also some other books that I wanted to get and talk about. There's this one book by Sarah Dessen I wanted to get called something with the moon. I can't remember exactly the title, but that particular one I think sounded interesting. There was another one that was that did the book Amy and Roger's Epic Detour, the one that I reviewed. She has another book out. It's called, I think, Second Chance Summer or something like that. And I thought that one sounded really interesting. I want to see if I can find that book, because I saw it at a Barnes & Noble, and I had a Barnes & Noble gift card that I got for Christmas, and I was like, shoot, they don't have it. Okay, well, maybe they'll have it at the one that's around where I live, because I was going traveling at that time, and I didn't bring it. And then, excuse me, and then when I went into the other store, other Barnes & Noble, they didn't have it, and I was like, no, why? But I think those two would be interesting teen novels to read. I want to see if maybe I can find Gone with the Wind, or at least a good copy of it. A lot of the books that are in like the $5 bookstore, which is basically where I got all of these books, they didn't have like a nice copy of it, and they were just all really torn up, and I was like, I'm not gonna spend money when it's all torn up like that. So I'll probably get it at some point and be able to review it. And I think it would also be interesting too to review the sequel that I actually think was done by another author. So I think that's really ultimately what I want to do with all these books, is to see if I can find more and maybe review more genres if I can. or at least find some stuff that seems interesting to me. But ultimately, I think that's really all I can say. If there are any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody,